The night air was heavy with unease as Sharon Burton drove through the quiet streets, her grandson, Dylan Thomas, sitting beside her, restless and agitated. He tapped furiously on his phone, sending text after text, his tension filling the small car. She glanced at him, worried, but said nothing. He had insisted they come here to check on his dog named Bruce. At the house he shared with his longtime best friend on Chapel Street in Cardiff. As they arrived, Mrs. Burton parked outside the property and made a phone call while Dylan went inside. He disappeared upstairs into the shared home, and for 7 minutes, which is later described as 7 minutes of horror. Dylan Thomas burst from the house, frantic, pounding on the car window, scaring the crap out of his elderly grandmother. Blood covered his hands, his face pale and contorted with fear. He keeps screaming, "I think he's dead." Sharon froze, her heart racing. She handed him her phone, her voice trembling as she urged him, "Call the police, call an ambulance." The moments dragged as the sirens finally broke the silence, cutting through the night like a blade. Inside, the scene was worse than she could have ever imagined. On the patio, she found him wounded, lifeless. She dropped to her knees and began CPR, her hands shaking but steady as she whispered prayers, willing him to hold on. She thought Will Bush was still alive since his eyes were open. Every second felt like eternity. Welcome to Shall We Brew, where we talk about true crime, bizarre mysteries, and shocking scandals, all while honoring the voices of the victims. Before we dive into today's story, I do have a trigger warning, as this story contains graphic details about stabbing as well as stab wounds. If that is too much for you, feel free to skip this episode and I'll see you in the next one. This case is still going through trial, so all things stated in this video are alleged. You are innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. I also want to address an important aspect in today's case. The perpetrator in the story was later diagnosed and treated for schizophrenia. It's crucial to emphasize that having a mental disorder does not make someone inherently dangerous or violent. The vast majority of people living with schizophrenia or any other mental health condition are not harmful to others. In this episode, we aim to explore the complex details of this case while maintaining empathy and understanding toward mental health issues. Now, with that being said, get ready and remember, once we start brewing, the truth can't be unsipped. William Bush and Dylan Thomas had known each other for years. They met at Christ College in Brecon, which is a prestigious private school. They had maintained a long-standing friendship. William had built a promising career as a surveyor at a commercial property firm, while Dylan, at 24 years old, was a computer programmer, but also an heir to $290 million fortune stemming from his family's successful business, Peter's Savory Products, known for its pastries filled with like chicken and gravy or pork and sausage, and there's actually several others. Dylan's family legacy was marked by wealth and influence. His grandfather, Sir Gilbert Stanley Thomas, had been knighted for his charitable contributions, and his father had sold the family business for £75 million in 1988. Dylan himself worked as a computer program and lived in Llandaff, Cardiff, where he and William shared a property on Chapel Street. However, cracks in their friendship began to show in the months leading up to the incident. Dylan's behavior had become erratic and troubling signs were emerging. In October and November of 2023, William confided in his girlfriend, Ella, about his concerns regarding Dylan. He told her that Dylan had made a comment, "I thought about killing you." William took the remark seriously. He felt the need to barricade his bedroom door at night so Dylan would not come in while he was sleeping. On November 6th, Dylan had been arrested in London for trying to climb into Buckingham Palace after attempting to scale a 14-foot fence outside the royal residence. On December 24th, just after midnight, Dylan searched the internet for autonomy of the neck. At some point between the internet search and the early morning hours, he texted William saying he needed to see him before the holidays. At 3:31 a.m., Dylan tried to book an Uber, and for whatever reason, he was not able to get one. He ultimately called his grandmother, Sharon Burton, for a ride. He claimed he wanted to check on his dog, Bruce, and she agreed to drive him to the property that he shared with William. Sharon Burton later described Dylan as agitated during the drive. He sent multiple text messages and appeared very restless. When they arrived at Chapel Street, she parked outside the property and made a phone call while Dylan went inside. He was inside the property for approximately 7 minutes. During that time, Dylan entered through the kitchen where he armed himself with a large kitchen knife and a black lock or flick knife, which is also, in America, we would just call pocket knife or a switchblade. He then proceeded to go up the 2 staircases and into the room of William Bush. The prosecution suggests Will was standing or sitting near a beanbag when Dylan attacked him from behind, stabbing him at least once to the back of the neck. The assault continued as Will tried to flee for his life all the way down to the first floor. Blood evidence showed that William was pursued down 2 flights of stairs, through the kitchen and onto the patio, where he collapsed from a fatal neck wound that severed a major artery. A forensic scientist later testified that blood was found throughout the house, including on walls, stairways, and kitchen surfaces. Outside is where he scares Sharon Burton, and her worst fears are realized when Dylan banged on her car window, covered in blood, saying, "I think he's dead." She handed him her phone and urged him to call emergency services. Moments later, she found Will on the patio and attempted CPR, believing that he was possibly still alive. "I prayed he was going to be okay," she later stated in tears. Paramedics arrived and he was taken 2 miles to the University Hospital of Wales, but Will was pronounced dead there. A post-mortem examination was carried out at the University Hospital of Wales. The cause of death was multiple stab wounds to the neck and body. In the brutal attack, he stabbed William 37 times, all which were reported to be in the upper body region. So a lot of them were like neck, shoulder, arm, head. It is stated Will bled to death on the patio from the knife stabbing him in the chest, cutting his throat, severing the major artery in his neck. Dylan initially told police he acted in self-defense, and I quote, "I killed him. He came at me and I stabbed him. I stabbed him. He attacked me. It was self-defense. He attacked me. He was having an episode. It has been happening for months." Prosecutors argued that Dylan's actions were premeditated. I think this is stemming from his search on the internet beforehand. Following the incident, Dylan's mental health deteriorated further. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and has been receiving treatment. The court heard the defendant claim he was suffering from abnormality of the mind at the time of the killing and did not have rational judgment about whether what he was doing was right or wrong, or have the ability to exercise willpower in respect of his irrational thoughts. Dylan Thomas denies murder, but has pleaded guilty to manslaughter. I've seen quite a few articles stating this, and I don't know if it was for shock value. But after doing some research, I found out that the sentences are slightly different for the crimes. Murder is a mandatory life sentence. For manslaughter, the sentence is up to maximum of life imprisonment. So the defense is probably trying and hoping to get Dylan a lesser sentence than life. I could be wrong. I'm not an attorney. I know absolutely nothing about law, but kind of what it came down to is murder is just like, it's an automatic life sentence. Automatic. You're not getting out. Manslaughter, it's up to life sentence. So life sentence is like the worst sentence that he could get. So it might be possible for him to get something less. As of now, the case remains in the courts with Dylan Thomas's defense focusing on mental health. The trial continues to examine the balance between his accountability for the crime and the impact of his mental illness. William's family describes him as a loyal, funny, and caring individual. In a statement, they said, "Our beloved Will was taken away from us in such a cruel and indescribable way." Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Shall We Brew? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this case. Comment below. Let me know what you think. I feel like there's just not a ton of information out yet. And I think that we are really going to see a lot more information come out as this plays in court. But don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share with a friend who loves true crime. Until next time, stay safe. I'll see you next week.